and welcome to the Bullcast Podcast. I'm Katie Pickler, and with me are my two guys, Court Winsett.
Hello, Katie.
And Cameron Spann.
Hello, Katie.
Are y'all Twinkies?
He stole my line.
Oh, man. Y'all, hey, do not fight. You know what happens when you fight. I don't want to break up this marriage.
Oh, well, I mean...
Are we all married, the three of us?
We're in a work marriage relationship. Okay, love and marriage.
Love and marriage.
But then sometimes love and marriage doesn't always continue.
What we will frequently tell people is that I wouldn't want to call it a sweet spot of ours because that might sound a little bit, that puts a little bit too much shine on something that can be a very sad experience for a lot of people. But an area that we tend to excel in at Pickler Wealth Advisors is helping people through major life changes. Mm-hmm. That could be the death of a loved one. That could be
change.
A birth, a job change, or divorce.
Yeah.
And clearly, a lot of people struggle with the financial reality of getting a divorce and what that's going to mean for them in the immediate time and in the long term. Yeah. And so we have had our fair share of clients that we've had to help through that process. And so we thought today we would do
post-divorce tips. And so these are for you who are divorced, thinking about getting divorced, married, but maybe one day it may happen to you. I mean, know somebody that's getting divorced. The reality is probably every single person listening to this knows somebody who is divorced, is on the road to divorce, or something like that. And so these are helpful tips just to kind of guide you through it, because it is obviously a huge change in your life. It's traumatic emotionally because you're losing this person you thought you were going to be with forever, but you're kind of having to start all over again. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to go through this. Of course, we've got a fun little list to go through first. Fun is a bad word. This is a breakup list. Famous breakups in movie and TV shows.
some of these are massive, and I've
massive.
I'm looking through the list, and I think I have experienced all of these. And by experienced, I mean I've watched all of these that happen. So,
yep.
For once, I'm familiar with the entire list.
Okay, so before we give to you the post-divorce tips, let's talk about these famous breakups. First one on the list, Ross and Rachel.
Indeed.
We were on a break.
Yeah, this is Friends. If you have not seen Friends, this was a very big breakup.
Yes, it was. It was a massive breakup. And, of course, we were on a break was a huge line throughout the rest of the series.
Yeah.
Okay, so next on the list is Ted and Robin from How I Met Your Mother. And from this particular show, I'm not sure that this is the biggest breakup that happened because there were several over the course of the series. But
Barney?
Barney and Robin broke up.
That would be a bigger. That was more heartbreaking to me.
Marshall and
Lily
broke up in like season 1, I think. So like at the end of season 1, I think they broke up. And then she came back and they got back together in the beginning of season 2 or near the beginning of season 2. But anyway, neither here nor there. Ted and Robin was probably a big one. For Ted, at least. I don't think anybody else cared.
It's super neat that I get the one from a show that I've never seen. Have y'all seen Grey's Anatomy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is Grey's Anatomy, Derek and Meredith.
Yeah, that was traumatic. And then ultimately spoiler, Derek dies.
Yeah. I'm not sure that I watched it long enough to actually see them break up. It got to a point where I was like, this is a little bit too...
It's been on for like 10 bajillion
seasons. It is still rolling.
Yeah, so this was early, the first couple of seasons, because I stopped watching after like 4 or 5 or something like that, and this was
kind of early on in the series.
Yeah.
Relatively.
How did Derek die?
Plane crash, wasn't it? Wasn't it?
I think so. I can't remember. Somebody got shot. Somebody went down in a plane crash. Somebody, there
was always something dramatic that happened.
Yeah.
Sorry to you Grey's fans. Like, it's a great show, but I'm just a little rusty on my details. Court, I got to give... Well, yeah, you can take that one, and then I'll take the other one.
Okay. So the next one on the list is Buffy and Angel from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, my favorite show. And, of course, Buffy and Angel were the pivotal couple for the first 3 seasons. And then Angel left to go to L.A. and do his own spin-off show.
Okay, well, another one of Court and my favorite shows, The Vampire Diaries, you had Damon and Elena. Mm-hmm. And it is heartbreaking. I would just want them to be together. And their breakups are epic because it's like shutting off your humanity and dramatic.
They shut off their humanity. They go away and go on murdering sprees. It's terrible.
Yeah, so they're not great together and they're not great apart. They're even worse apart.
Yeah.
Next on the list is my favorite favorite show, Breaking Bad, it would be Jesse and Jane. Jesse Pinkman, who's one of the main characters, he's Walter White's sidekick. And then Jane, remember with the bangs, black hair?
Yeah,
She actually dies from an overdose.
Yeah.
She chokes.
They didn't just
chokes to
break
death.
up. That wasn't a post-divorce. That was a post...
I'm trying to remember if they broke up and then she died. She OD'd
No, because
of
I think they were in bed together when she died. I'm pretty sure that she and Jesse were in bed. Somebody was there that could have stopped her from dying.
It was Walter White.
Yeah.
He let her die.
Yeah.
Time for a rewatch.
Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway.
man. Okay. Good times.
Okay, so Jon Snow and Ygritte from Game of Thrones. And this was obviously his now wife.
Yes.
In real life.
The actors in real life are married now. Yes.
Yeah. So obviously they break up on the show, but then like their love was so strong on the show, they had to get married in real life.
She was the fiery-haired, fiery-tempered wildling? Wildling, yep.
Yeah. So they got together while they were north of the wall, and then they scaled the wall. And then once they were over the wall, they got into a tussle, and John ran away, and she shot him. And then later on, she's trying to get into Castle Black, and he shoots her, and everybody's killing everybody. It was a messy breakup for sure.
The show is messy.
Very true.
Noah and Allie from The Notebook.
You get a sweet one.
Yeah.
I don't really have a whole lot to say about this one.
They end up together, though, in the end,
do.
don't they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, I'll just throw this in there. Sometimes we'll have people that get divorced and then get back together.
That's true.
That happens, but we'll talk a little
We
bit
have
more
seen
about
that
that
happen,
in the episode.
Yeah.
All right, next on the list is Rick and Ilsa from the film Casablanca. Here's looking at you, kid.
As epic love stories go, I always felt like I was missing part of the story for Casablanca, because when she shows up, they know each other. They have some sort of past. And
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm missing the vibe here. But anyway.
I'm trying to remember. He delivers that line on the tarmac of an airport, right? At night in Casablanca.
Yeah, that's a very famous scene. That movie, the images from that scene is everywhere when it comes to film history. Innocent Jack from Brokeback Mountain. So I think I saw this movie once.
I haven't watched it a ton of times, but of course, they are a love story that's fraught with many, many issues. They're both married to other people, and I think one of them ends up committing suicide, maybe? I don't know.
Not a good breakup.
Yeah.
It takes place in the 60s or 70s.
I don't know.
It's somewhere in there, right?
And like Western country
definitely.
boys, like
Yeah, I feel like it's Montana, Wyoming, somewhere up there.
I think it's in the 70s.
a love story. It's almost like a love story that shouldn't have been. And so kind of,
Well, it was definitely a very difficult watch. I mean, like, it packed several emotional punches. So, of course, that was Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger, and I think Jennifer Williams might have won an Oscar for it, or it was at least nominated. And then also a very, very young Anne Hathaway. Yeah.
Yep. And Dark Knight, Jake Gyllenhaal's sister performed
Maggie.
with Heath, and
He did win an Oscar for that.
yeah. And then what's her face played Catwoman in the third one.
Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Okay, so next on the list is Hazel and Gus from The Fault in Our Stars. Now, this is a young adult novel by
John Green. Yep.
that was made into a movie, probably also intended for young adults. But I got to tell you, I watched this movie several times.
it was good.
And I thought it was very good, and it is heartbreaking breakup at the end. Of course, it's a little more than just a breakup.
Yeah, she has cancer, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they both do.
Yeah.
Oh,
they're
that's
both,
right.
They're
That's
both
right.
sick
Yep.
and
Abby loved the book. She thought the movie was fine, but the book got her. And then I get the most broad one to finish up the list. Any superhero couple forced to choose between love and saving the world, which is a
All of
common
them.
trope. It's just
Yeah.
like, there's no time for romance. The world needs me. Woman.
Although it bothers me, and I guess this is me not being a romantic, but it really stresses me out, those action movies when they're like, I gotta go save the world. And then they start making out. And I'm like,
Yep.
stop kissing, stop hugging, go save, get that car off that person, go stop the villain. There's no time for kissing. No time for kissing.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, I watched Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, which is the finale to the trilogy.
Okay.
And they're in that big maelstrom in the ocean. There are hundreds of ships, Davy Jones, explosions, and it's just like Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann are getting married. Captain Barbossa marries them during all of this. I'm like, there's no time for it.
No time for love. Okay, clearly Bulk, I don't know, Court's being quiet over there, but Cam and Katie are like, no time for love, no time for kissing. Get your crap done. Get the action
But
happening.
man, it made it cinematic. It was like slow motion, the rain, and they're kissing, and the camera spinning around them, and all the pirates are like, rah. It's awesome.
But it's like, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Okay.
I've just always been like, if the world is going to end in 30 seconds, then yeah, don't take the time to give her a kiss goodbye. But, if you're like, I've got to go, I must go save the world, but I got a few hours. So what's 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Go ahead and lay one on her. Goodbye.
So maybe you have different opinions on is there time for a kiss or is there not, which could lead you to divorce.
Very true.
Would you stop kissing me? I just want to give you some attention. Stop kissing me. I don't like PDA. We were never meant to be together.
Never, ever getting back together.
So this is all about the flame dwindling, isn't it?
So this is, you're divorced. It's the freight train is here. There's nothing you can do about it. You have decided for whatever reason to separate. And with that means you are not only separating as a couple, you're separating as a family, you're separating your finances. There's a lot that goes into it. And it's so much more than just, I don't love you anymore, or I love you enough that we don't need to be together. Because that is a reason some people have to get divorced, is you may love the person, but it's not in y'all's best interest to stay together. So these are kind of some tips that we're going to go through in this episode. Tips for settling into a new financial life after divorce, because you have gone from two incomes, two people working together, two people working on, making decisions on financial purchases, on what you're buying, two people saving collectively for your expenses, for your future, for
Two people
everything.
that can split time taking care of children if you have children.
Exactly. And now you've got the expense of if you have kids, you're splitting kids of, picking them up, taking them out to activities, who pays for what.
Somebody's more than likely going to have to pay child support, one to the other.
Child support, alimony.
Yeah.
And
all
so
of those.
legal jargon, give us just a quick 2-second, the difference between, I think most people know, but the difference between child support and alimony.
Alimony is a payment that one spouse, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the husband, but one spouse makes to the other spouse to help them financially transition into their new life as a single person. Just like every other law, it differs from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but it doesn't usually last the rest of your life. It usually is for a period of time and then it ends. Child support, on the other hand, is support that is intended to allow the child that is, at least in the state of Tennessee, allow the child that is a product of the relationship to live the life that they should be able to live.
If they were still together.
Yeah, regardless of whether they were with their mom or with their dad or living together. So that payment will go from one parent, who is generally the non-custodial parent, which means that they have fewer days per week than the other parent. So it could be that one parent has the child 4 days a week and one parent has the child 3 days a week. Well, the 3 days a week parent is the non-custodial parent. And it is possible, based on some spreadsheet calculations, basically, that that person, based on their income, may have to pay some of their income to the other parent. But the concept is that you're not actually, and this is something that people hate about child support. They're like, why do I need to give her more money? I'm already paying her alimony, or vice versa. Why do I have to pay him? He's making plenty of money himself. He doesn't need my money. It's not money that is intended for the parent. It is money that is intended for the child.
Yeah. It's for their soccer, for their needs, their clothes, their things like that.
Exactly.
It's one of those things, and this is not necessarily in the outline, but I want to address this. There are some times that people are not financially able to retire.
Retire from marriage.
Retire. There are sometimes people are not able to actually financially divorce. It is not in their best interest that I know they may not love each other anymore, but they financially need each other for themselves, for their children. And so that's always a hard thing. But Court, as you were talking about child support and things like that, some of the common things we come across is that divorce is personal completely to every single person and what structure you have with your partner. But it's also an ongoing thing, because if you divorce when your children are super young, you're probably going to have to readdress those terms as they get older, and you've now got a kid who wants to do competitive cheer and one that wants to do competitive soccer, or it's talking about education. Because what you agree to when you guys are in your 30s and you've got young children, it's going to then be a conversation when they're now turning 18 and trying to go that direction, or if one of you gets remarried. So there's so much evolution and different things that happen within a divorce. And it is just a part of your changing financial picture, just like you should, even if you're married, update it every couple of years. you need to do the same thing. You need to be on top of it. So, okay, marriage is done. You are divorced. What do you need to do?
Yeah, I guess we should point out that I am a lawyer, but I'm not a family law lawyer. So we don't usually have people that are coming to us asking us if they should get a divorce.
No.
A lot of the time,
It's
most of the
decided.
time, they've come to us and they basically said, I am getting a divorce. What do I do? So that is one area where people don't really ask for our advice as early as maybe they ought to. You might want to be asking us for financial advice before you make the final call that you are going to get a divorce, because that could make a difference in your decision.
I've had a handful that have kind of said, we're leading that direction. We're separating. And it's, I've kind of tried to financially prepare them ahead of time, because obviously if we know prior to the divorce, we can help negotiate and talk to you about the different division of assets.
And ultimately, I guess really, I misspoke a little bit. If you've made a decision that emotionally you need to get out of a marriage, then we're not going to try and convince you to not.
No, we're going to go through the numbers.
We're just going to try and give you your financial reality, right?
Yeah. And that's what it is. It's understanding your financial reality. You need to now understand you are in a different position now. What is your personal income stream? What is your personal responsibilities? What are your dreams? I've got a friend and client now that they're separated. They have one house that was the marital house, and now the other one is trying to decide, what do they do? Do they rent? Do they buy? They're trying to then establish their life separately. And so there's a lot of really kind of going through the numbers, and you're having to almost start over again. But it's not that you're starting all over again. You still have, I hate the term, but you still have baggage associated with you, because you've got what you're coming out of that marriage with.
Yeah. And so one of the things that you should do is you should establish sort of a baseline of what your financial situation is. If you know you're getting a divorce, but you haven't gotten a divorce, then you don't necessarily know what kind of assets you're going to end up with. How are those marital assets going to be divided? Are you going to get any share of your spouse's assets that are their own? What kind of state do you live in? Do you live in community property? So for that purpose, you need to talk to an attorney and try and get an idea of what sort of assets you will have when the divorce is finalized. They may not be able to tell you exactly. There may be a lot of negotiations that go into it, but kind of let them give you an idea of what you might be entitled to, so that you can get a picture of what kind of money you will have on hand. What is your current income? What are your expenses going to be after divorce? Are you going to have a house that's paid for, or are you going to have a mortgage? Are you going to pay rent? You've got to think of all of those things for yourself. Are you
splitting the bills of the kids? And a lot of it also I'll run across is just the simple little details you don't think about. Okay, you've all been on a cell phone plan together. Are you going into a type of divorce where it is I want to completely cut ties. I don't want to have anything to do with this person. Maybe there wasn't kids in the situation and it's just like completely separate. Or are you in one where there are kids? It was a civil divorce and you're still planning to work well together.
Co-parent.
Maybe y'all are leaving a joint account where that is the account that y'all use to pay for the
people
kids.
Do that?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Some people will still structure a joint account that is just for kid expenses. And so, the ex-husband and ex-wife will put money into that. And so it makes it easier for them exchanging money back and forth as kids needed, as things come up, instead of them having to write checks or Venmo or things like that. So that's the clients I've come across that are more civil and are trying to make it as simple as possible for the kids. Right. But then it's making sure, are you getting that other person off of your bank accounts? Are you getting them off of your authorized credit cards? What about, Netflix, Hulu, things like that? And so
one of the things that people don't consider until I've had people that have come in and said, I'm getting a divorce, I'm ready to pull the trigger. Then they pull the trigger and they go, oh, wait, I've got all these recurring charges on my credit card that are actually for him. I've got to cancel those. And, you've got to work through just the most minute detail.
People always go, why do divorces take so long? I mean, because you have all these little details you're trying to fix. And even with your employers, I know I'm kind of jumping on this outline, but the biggest thing is when you decide that it is time for you to get divorced, then you need to go back and take a look at all your beneficiaries on all your accounts because it's been your spouse. And so maybe you don't want it to be your spouse anymore. Maybe you want it to be just your kids or somebody else. And so there's a lot of cleaning up and kind of reorging that has to happen with your financial personal statement. You got to think about your credit score. That's something now that,
one spouse might have been carrying the other one,
Yeah.
And so if that spouse is no longer your spouse and you're just left with your own credit score, how is it? Does it need rehabilitation?
Yeah. Or is it one of those that you didn't realize your spouse was still associated with something that now they're draining your credit score because they still are an authorized user on something?
Yeah.
Because that can happen too. So change beneficiaries on retirement accounts, insurance policies, investment accounts. Now, again, we got to throw the legal part of this in there. There's a lot of legal stuff that goes into with retirement accounts, investment accounts, bank accounts, things like that, that I would assume most every time after a divorce, it is very specific. Here are these accounts that are subject to being divided within the divorce.
Yes.
And then here are ones that are like beneficiary accounts, things like that are separate that the other spouse has nothing to do with.
Right. You have a couple of things in a divorce. First of all, why does it take so long? Well, again, in Tennessee, there are established wait periods that you have to wait before you could actually get your divorce finalized. Even if you're getting divorced and it's completely amicable and you have no kids and there are no worries, you're still going to have to wait a minimum of 60 days to finalize your divorce. So you file a petition for divorce. And then the next step is you negotiate how you're going to split up all the assets. And you come up with something called a marital dissolution agreement. And that's the thing that describes how all of your assets
Dissolve the marriage.
Yeah. Well, it's more about splitting up stuff. Who's getting the house? Who's paying the mortgage? Who's going to pay this credit card? Who's going to pay that credit card? All of that stuff. Then you also could potentially, if you have children, have something called a permanent parenting plan. And that's where you describe how the two of you are going to actually raise your child. Who's going to be responsible for what? Who agrees to pay what? Who's going to make religious decisions? Who's going to make education decisions? All of that goes into a permanent parenting plan. The marital dissolution agreement and the permanent parenting plan have to be filed with the court before you can ever get your divorce finalized. So all of this negotiating goes into getting those documents done, and then you can finally ask the court to issue a final decree of divorce. But by the time the court issues the final decree, everything's basically
It's been done.
done. Yeah.
I know you don't deal with divorce as much, but kind of when we talk about prenups and how we say, yes, you love this person, you hope you never get divorced, you put everything in there in case everything was to go bad. I feel like the same thing. I have heard horror stories and personally had some friends that when they were getting divorced, when they were separating, they were still okay with each other. And they were not as strict or as black and white with their instructions when they got divorced. And then they fast forward 2 years down the road, one of them gets remarried, and they did not protect themselves and had things written black and white. It was more of like, oh, we're fine. We won't be that way. We'll figure it out. You shouldn't do that.
No. And it's unfortunate, but I guess because we're potentially in positions where we're exposed to the negative side of that more often than the common person would be.
Yeah.
Too many times have I heard people say, oh, that won't happen with us, or, oh, that won't happen with my children, or, oh, whatever the legal issue might be, that's not going to be us. We'll be okay. And then it turns out that you're not. So you want everything in writing. You want it as detailed as possible, and you want everything to be clear and in writing on the front end. Oh, you can trust me is never something you want to hear when you're going through something like that.
Because so much can change. Your financial situation can change. The ex-husband now is on financial troubles and y'all didn't have an agreement. It was just a kind of handshake agreement. Oh, he's going to take care of soccer or education or whatever. And all of a sudden he's now not making any money. And he's like, well, we don't have anything in writing. We just agreed to that spoken. That wasn't agreed. And it makes it where it's more and more hassle and trouble that follows you for the rest of your life versus if you had done it on the front end to make sure everything was lined up. And we've seen situations where people have gotten remarried or, maybe they didn't get remarried and it's just a new significant other and someone passes away and the beneficiary is the ex. And the ex is just coming up, hey, yep, that's my money.
Yeah.
And that's hard because you want to go, well, that ex hasn't been in that person's life for 20 years. Well, this is what the legal documents say. This is the beneficiary. So it's really taking this time to clean up your house, clean up everything, get it all in order. One of the phrases, the little acronyms that I had never heard of until I came to work in the financial industry, and now I feel like I hear it thrown around left and right, is quadro. I just went cuatro, cinco, seis, and that's not what it is. What is that, Court?
So if you have any sort of retirement plan through your employer, you will end up having to do a quadro, which is, it's QDRO. We pronounce it quadro, but it's QDRO. So it's not anything like the Spanish word for four, but it stands for Qualified Domestic Relations Orders. And what it is basically if either of you has a 401k and that 401k is going to be divided between you, there has to be a separate quadro that is provided to the retirement plan people for them to actually separate out this account. And it'll usually detail this amount of money is going to be distributed to this person in an IRA, and this other money is going to be kept by this person whose retirement plan it originally was. Not to really oversimplify a quadro, but that's the basic gist of it. You don't have to do that with other investment accounts. You don't have to have a quadro for an IRA. It is specifically for employer-related retirement savings accounts like 401ks. But I don't like them. Fortunately, like I said, I've never really practiced in that area of law, so I haven't had to deal with a lot of them as an attorney. But they do obviously come to us
on the financial side. We have people that have a quadro that they're the beneficiary of, assets coming in. Others that we're having a plan in there. Hey, this is their 401k balance, but actually a chunk of this is going to the ex-spouse. The other thing is reinvestigating about what your risk level is, what your assets need to be doing, because obviously maybe the husband was more aggressive and the wife was more conservative, but now that you're separate, then we need to have a better balance and really figure out what are your goals and dreams.
Husband may have been older than wife, so wife is potentially have a very different risk tolerance than her husband did because she's younger and she's got more time to build, or vice versa. You never know. But yeah, it's definitely a good time to reassess that as well.
And the other things that a lot of people may not think about is insurance and health care. You may need to look at employer disability benefits, supplemental policies, long-term care insurance, because before a lot of people may go, oh, well, if I can't work, my spouse can work. Well, now you're back to one.
Yeah.
And so looking at that, looking at your homeowners, your auto insurance, health benefits, because obviously a lot of times with cell phones, with insurance, it's all a bundle package. And so really kind of working on how does that split up? And I think a lot of times just for ease and depending on the divorced relationship, some people pay the other spouse the insurance money for their car because it's best for everybody to keep it all bundled together or things like that. I don't like that as much because then it still makes it very messy and not separated, but it happens.
Yeah. One of the more interesting things that sort of crosses my mind occasionally is I don't think in our 30 years almost of marriage that I've ever had my name on a utilities bill. And I just remember that very early on when we set up our utilities account, Robin set it up in her name. And so it's always just stayed in her name. But one of the things they did is they were like, oh, well, you don't have any utilities history with us, so we need this proof that you are who you say you are and you can make what to be able to pay your utilities bill. So I'm wondering if 30 years later, if something were to happen to her and
you
I had
couldn't
to get the
utilities.
Name, can I get my name on the bill, or am I going to have to prove that I can pay my utilities bill?
Yeah, I mean, because that's a lot of times one spouse has had all the cars in their name or had all the, the mortgage maybe is just in their name. So there's different things that go into it.
Well, and one of the things that we do run into quite frequently, a lot of times there will be one spouse that is the person who handles all of the couple's financial affairs and that doesn't really bother to tell the other person, and the other person isn't really interested in what's going on. And so you may be in a situation where if you were that person, you need assistance in sort of figuring out how all of this stuff is going to work and, what's going to be in your best interest now and how you're going to do this.
Yeah.
And
we've had to be saviors and really help some men and women who have lost their spouses to death or divorce and really kind of help them with basic bill paying, things like that, because there was one spouse that knew it all. And so that's where I know a couple episodes back, we talked about kind of women taking charge with finances, but I think sometimes it's shifted and the women are handling all the finances and the male doesn't know anything. So if you are in a dual relationship where y'all are splitting things, at least have some understanding. So if love does fall away and you're getting divorced, you at least have an understanding, but also you're protecting yourself if your name is being put on different things, because that's the other fear. Another no-brainer is obviously estate planning documents and making sure that you're updating, like we already talked about beneficiaries, but you're updating those legal documents, your healthcare power of attorney, your power of attorney for financial, all of that.
Yeah, I will say that most of the documents that we generate as power of attorney documents have a clause in there that says that, you know, if this person is no longer your spouse by either separation or divorce, then they can't serve as your agent. So there is that usually that safety catch in the documents, but you do still want to go ahead and amend them so that you can remove that person's name, assuming that you want to. Because some married couples, when they get divorced, they're like, no, still let her make the decisions. I haven't got anybody else.
And that's why it's, again, best practice, whether you're divorced, whether you're single, you're married, just to check all these documents every couple of years just to make sure the beneficiaries, the agents are in line with where you are right now in your life. The other thing to think about, and that's a whole other episode, is Social Security. There are specific rules in place on you getting Social Security benefit from your ex-spouse if you were married for 10 years and you are not remarried. So 10 years, you have to be married to them for 10 years, and you cannot remarry.
Well, in most cases.
In most.
It depends on how old you are when you remarry, how long you've been divorced when you remarry, and so forth.
Of course, with everything, there's minute little
it
things.
Depends, but good rule of thumb to go by is to just at least make sure that you know what the rules are about all of that. And how long you've got to go before you could reach minimum retirement age. Because if you're 40, you still have a ways to go before you could start drawing benefits anyway. And then obviously, finally, there's also, if you go through a divorce, you don't automatically have your name go back to your maiden name if you're a female, or if you took your spouse. I think some guys now take their spouse's name. So if you take in your spouse's name, your spouse's surname, you don't automatically go back to your original surname when you get a divorce, but the court can order that your name be changed back. But just the court just putting it in the order that your name is now this isn't going to change all of those licenses and credit cards and stuff that still probably have your old name on them. So that's something else you'll want to do.
Or just don't change your name.
Or just don't change your name to begin with.
I was saying, no, do you have to throw that out there? Had an issue checking into the airport a couple weeks ago, and my dad had booked the flight. We needed to look something up, and thankfully they said, what's his last name? And I said Pickler, and I was able to show my documentation. He said, okay, because y'all have the same last name, I can fix this. I was like, oh, thank God I haven't changed my name. And he said, well, in my culture, women don't change their name. They'll use their spouse's name socially and gatherings, but they don't. And he said, I've never understood why in the States it's so common for people to go through all this hassle and all this stuff to change names when they could just, socially use it and keep their names legally how it is. Like, maybe I'm a trendsetter. Not really. It's been going on forever. But yeah, so divorce is a terrible situation if it comes to that. But again, this is just another reason why having those partners, financial, legal, tax is the other thing of there are specific rules on when you get divorced and that last tax return that is done, married filing jointly versus then the tax returns that follow after that of being single. You can't just sign the divorce papers and be like, see ya. You still have stuff to clean up. And so they're just like when someone passes away, there's that final tax return. There's a final tax return after you get divorced. So you need to find your legal partners, your financial partners, and your tax partners to help guide you through this. So then ultimately you can try and avoid any big misses that'll happen early on that then will impact your next 15, 20, 30, 40 years.
All right. Well, why don't we, do you want to bullseye this up?
Sure, let's bullseye it.
From my perspective, I think the takeaway is understand where you are in the divorce process. Have you just made this decision? Are you still making the decision? Or is the divorce just about to be finalized? Because that's going to direct a lot of what your first step is going to be. When that divorce is actually final, what is the next step? Hopefully, if you are to the point where your divorce is final, the next step is going to be a list of just minutia that you're going to need to take care of. But it's good to meet with the professionals that can assist you with your financial affairs, with your bank, with all of that stuff. Obviously, your divorce attorney, if you had one, can probably give you some advice and guidance in terms of what you should do next.
Yeah.
But really getting a good, firm grasp on what your new financial reality is going to be, I think that's the key thing you need to understand and address as quickly as possible.
Good bullseye. We didn't talk about it in this episode, but obviously take care of your emotional self.
Whatever.
This is traumatic. This is a huge change, and it's going to take time. And so that's why it's important to have partners to help you get through this. And so you can focus on the emotional aspect of it, and we can whoever you choose, can help you walk through the checks and balances and make sure that you're cleaning up that section of it, and then you're setting yourself on a path with this new life, this new journey you've got. So that'd be my recommendation. Is I'm sorry if it does happen, but there are people out there who can help you get through it. Bullseye.
Well, that was going to be mine, so I don't have one.
So Cam's over here being quiet.
I had pinpointed that one. I'm like, I got this one. No, I've been nice and quiet during this episode. It's been interesting.
You've been soaking it in.
Soaking it in. Yeah.
Oh, there's the closing bell. Ladies and gentlemen, you've made it to the end of yet another episode of the Bullcast Podcast. If you liked what you heard and you'd like to hear more, please feel free to go to your favorite subscription service and sign up to have our podcast beamed directly to your device every single Thursday at noon. If you'd like to find out more about Court, Cameron, Katie, or Nicole, please go to our website. We've got our bios up there. We've also got a place where you can drop a comment, suggest a topic you'd like to hear us talk about. We've even got pictures if you like pictures. But hey, if you like pictures, we've got even more pictures over at Instagram. That handle is @BullcastPodcast. And we have an X handle. That handle is @BullcastPodcast as well. We also have a page on Facebook. That page is Bullcast the Podcast. Finally, I know we mentioned at the very top of this episode, we work at a place called Pickler Wealth Advisors. And if you'd like to find out more about what we do, more about what we can do for you, find out about our amazing team, or find out about our boss, David Pickler, please feel free to go to that website. That website is picklerwealthadvisors.com.
That's advisors with an O.
Not an E.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've given you everything you need to go forth, and if the need arises, know what you're going to do about getting divorced. So for now, I'm Cord.
I'm Katie.
I'm Cam.
And we're done. We're done. I'm out.
We're on a break.